So the next thing we are going to discuss now is pricing. Pricing is the vehicle that marketers use in order to communicate value to consumers. So it's very important to understand that pricing is not just a financial factor, but it's actually one of the most important marketing strategy tools that marketers have in their disposal. So price is defined as the amount of money that is charged for a product or a service or an experience, or the sum of values exchanged between the company and the consumer. Now, one of the questions is, well, what is the lowest price a company can charge and what is the highest price? So the lowest price will always be the product costs. Obviously, if the company cannot make money, there is no point in marketing the product. However, in many occasions, the company can charge much higher prices than the cost price. And that will be because of the value that consumers put on a product. So luxury products, for example, designer products, those will be a good example where actually manufacturing the product does not reflect the price that the company charges. Hence, there are two types of pricing we can think of. One is cost-based pricing, and the other one is value-based pricing. Now, cost-based pricing is based on the product. How much does it cost to produce the product? And there are many ways where we can actually lower the cost based on manufacturing. This really has nothing to do with marketing. It starts from the product. Then you know how much it costs to create it, and then you set the price. Once you set the price, you want to make sure that the target market will see the value and will agree to pay that price. Value-based pricing, on the other hand, does not start with the product. It starts with the customers. So you're thinking when you develop your new product, how much value customers will see in this product. Once you know the value, you can determine a price. Once you determine the price, then you want to see, well, how much is it actually going to cost me to produce this product? And only then you produce the product. This again explains why in the new product development, only in the 7th stage, we are even thinking of developing the product. Because we always start from the consumer. We want to know the value. Based on that value, we know the pricing. And only then we want to make sure that it's actually worth developing the product. So what kind of costs one might have, although they're not marketing decisions, they are very important for a marketer to understand. And there's a few types of cost. There is fixed cost and there's variable cost. Fixed costs are those that do not vary with the amount of unit you produce. So that can be like the rent you pay for offices or for a factory. That can be the amount you pay for buying the equipment to produce the products. That can be the marketing staff, the accounting staff, and so forth. However, variable costs do vary with how many units you produce. So that can be, for example, the electricity you need to pay depending on how long the factory is open. Or maybe sales commission. So how much do you pay for the sales force depending on how many units they sold? Usually, the more products you sell, the variable cost will be lower. There is always advantage for high volume of production. Now, total cost, which is the cost that we are interested in, will be the sum of the fixed cost as well as the variable cost. Now, because the variable costs vary, it will not be a straight line. So here, where we have cost on one side and quantity on the other, we see that the fixed cost is a straight line. It is not dependent on how many units we actually produce. However, variable cost will go higher if we produce more and will go lower if we will produce less. The total cost then will be taking this plus this together, and hence total cost obviously will be higher than both and also will get the same slope as variable cost. Now, how do we know what price to charge? So we can do what we call a break-even analysis. A break-even analysis looks at the quantity that we sell as well as the revenue and cost. Break-even analysis will tell me how many units I have to sell before I start to make profit, meaning before my total cost actually is becoming lower than my total revenue, because this is where I want to be. I want to make profit. So if my marketing strategy and my projection of sales tells me there's a very good chance to make more units than this number, then it is worth for me to manufacture the product. However, if I think that even with my marketing strategy, I will not be able to sell so many units, which will be this number, then it is not worth for me to actually sell the product. Now, some factors that are affecting the price decision will be what we call the type of demand. There are two types of demands, inelastic and elastic demand. Inelastic demand basically means that the demand will not change if we only make small changes in prices. This will work usually within the luxury goods industry. It can also work, let's say, in the drug industry, medical drugs, where you must get your antibiotics, you must get your medication, and even though the pharmacy will raise the price, you must get that drug. But also in designer products, if Gucci, if Rolex increase the price, usually the same people will still buy the product. It will be affected by how much income the consumers have, but also how much desirability there is for the product. On the other hand, elastic demand, as you can see, is relatively flat. That means that any change in price will carry a big change in quantity. Those will be the products where giving discounts and price reduction makes a lot of sense. However, it's almost very difficult to actually increase the price, because if you increase the price, let's say from P1 to P2, when you have P1, you will sell Q1. But when you have P2, you will sell Q2. So see how a small reduction or increase in price have an effect on the quantity of the product. Now, there are different types of markets. Excuse me. There are different types of competition. When we have pure competition, that means that there's many players in the market. Those players are there and have almost no influence on the price. This is compared to what we call pure monopoly. So let's look at some of these competitors. So competition is when we have directly similar products. So we have, for example, different brands of running shoes. We have a lot of substitutes. We also have products that are unrelated, that actually seeking the same amount of money. For example, should I buy a new car or should I take a long vacation? Those all compete for the same amount of money that the consumers have. So what kind of pricing strategies then should I enter? So one type of pricing would be skimming. Skimming is when I enter at a very high price in order to maximize my profit. This will happen when I have something that's really very unique. Also, it might happen when my production costs are very high and I can't afford not to charge a high price. Now, it's difficult for competitors to enter and undercut when I have a skimming pricing. For example, when iPhone just started, it did have a high cost because of technological development. And hence, using a skimming pricing, charging very high prices, made a lot of sense. The other type of price is penetration, which is the opposite of skimming. Penetration is when you enter at a low price. And this is when you want to introduce it to the market and reduce the risk of actually buying the product. Now, if you have something really unique and desirable, you know that people will pay the high prices because there's a lot of value. However, when you have a product that you're not sure is actually going to be desirable, then you will use penetration. Also, the fact that you have low price will deter competitors because there's not a lot of profit to be made. And maybe there's not room in the market for more than one or two players. Now, those decisions really will depend on who the target market is, how risky the product is, and how much you want to increase the volume in the introduction stage as compared to keeping a specific brand image. So what kind then of pricing strategies do we have? So those are 5 different strategies that has to do with the product mix that companies can use. Product line pricing is when I take into account the cost of the differences between the products that I have in a line. So, for example, I might be, let's say, Tumi, who is selling luggage. So they can have the top suitcase with the 4 wheels. That will be the most expensive product. But you can also buy a Tumi bag that might be a small bag to carry your small toilet when you're flying on a plane. So the pricing will start very high, but can actually go relatively low. In other words, if you're interested in a specific brand, you might be able to buy something of that brand, even though it's a wallet as compared to a full bag. Then we have optional product pricing. Optional product pricing takes into account optional or accessory products along with the main product. This is usually done in the automobile industry, where you have a price for a car, but then they ask you, what kind of, do you want leather in the car? Do you want a specific wheeler? Do you want a specific type of tires? So all of that will be optional product. You do not have to buy them. So the baseline is relatively low, but then when you add up, it actually becomes quite expensive. Then we have captive product pricing. This is products that you must use and buy along with your original product. So a printer is a good example. Many years, printers you could also only use with their specific ink, meaning that the printer itself might not be that expensive, but the cartridge, the ink that you have to buy, is relatively expensive. So those will be, and before the digital camera, you buy the camera, but then you have to continue to buy the film. So that will be a captive product pricing. Then we have 2-part pricing. This involves what we call a fixed fee and then a variable usage fee. So you're like a member, but then when you buy something like Costco, so you do pay the fixed price for membership, but then every time you go to Costco, obviously you pay for the grocery. So that will be the fixed fee as compared to variable usage fee. And then you have by-product pricing. That refers to products with little or no value that are produced as a byproduct of another product. So one of the classic ones is that at the time 3M produced a very strong glue and had a byproduct that was a very weak glue. And that's how Post-its were actually created. So they used the weak glue for Post-its and created a new product as a byproduct. Now, when the strong glue was created, the sales projection and profit only came from this new product. So actually, any amount of money they made above that because of the weak glue, because using Post-it, was a pure profit for the company. And then we have product bundle pricing, where we combine several products to reduce price. So many times when you go to buy something, they'll say, oh, if you buy 2, you get the second one 50% off. So that will be a good example of product bundle.